Hello, this is Mrs. Heinzman. And so last time we looked at working with the Crayola watercolor mixing set, and I showed you how to create a chart and how to work with these colors in terms of mixing them. And so this time what we're going to do is talk about working with a dry method. And in watercolor, we refer to that technique as either being using a wet method or a dry method. And so a dry method would be where you have your paper, and I would come in with my paint and my brush, and I would paint directly onto the paper so that it would be a dry method. When I just come in and I paint, that is a dry method. Now I would probably let this set before I added another color, but that is what it's referred to as a dry method, when you're taking your paint and you are doing it directly. Now the wet method would be where we would come in with our paper. In the wet method, I have some good examples, and I'll kind of go over them with you. But a wet method is when we come in here and we're going to apply water to our paper. And then what we want to do is we're going to come in and grab our paint, and we're going to kind of have the brush kind of dance around. We can allow it to kind of move. The water will allow it to move. If you want to add a little bit more water, we could kind of come in here and add some more water to it. I could then come in and grab some yellow. I can add it in certain areas so that it kind of naturally blends. The water, because there's a lot of water, it will kind of just flow here and there, and I can continue to do that. Always clean your brush, get some clean water here, and then what I'm going to do is grab some red up here, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a little bit more, put some red around here. I'm going to clean my brush, add some water, and I'm going to kind of let that dissolve out, move it around, and I can keep building that up. So that would be considered kind of a wet method. And I basically want to maybe let this dry, but even while it is still wet like this, one of the things that I can do is some of the other techniques, and that is either doing the splatter, not so much a sponge. We could do the toothbrush and the salt technique. So what I'm going to show you on here is in a little area, I'm going to do the salt technique. So if I come in here and I take a little bit of salt, and you can see the kind of effect that you kind of get. You can see where the salt is going to absorb the water. But one of the nice things about that, it'll give you a certain effect. I'm going to show you some examples. I can come back in here and kind of just dab a little bit more paint into that area. That salt is going to want to absorb the color that's around there, so it'll kind of make it a little bit stronger. The other thing that you could do is, if I wanted to come in with my brush, I'm going to get this kind of wet, and I think I'll just add a little bit of water here to it. It's my dirty water, but it's not that dirty at the moment. Is to take my brush, and what I want to do is kind of fling it a little bit so that it kind of splatters it. And I can do that with my brush. I'm going to add a little bit more water to this. So I'll show you, I can just go like this, and I can make some nice effects using that. I'm going to clean this brush, and what I'm going to do is get some clean water and add a lot more to this little area right here. Just both the orange and the red kind of together. The other option is to take a toothbrush, must be old, not the one that you're using right now. And I can kind of come in here and flick it. And I have a little bit more water on there than I want, but it'll work. And I can would have to let that be set aside so that I could use it. Clean that brush, set it over here. So what I've done here is use the wet wash, a little bit of salt, And this part right here is either flicking it or taking the toothbrush and taking your finger along here so that you are splattering it. I'm going to set this little piece of paper example aside. I'm going to grab another piece of paper. The other technique, and these are all on our drawing paper here at school, the other technique would be to take a sponge. So you would take your clean sponge. Apparently I didn't have it too clean because it still has some paint in it. Turn my water a little yellow. So what I would do is, if I've mixed up my colors right here, I would take my sponge and I could come in here and then I can kind of gently sponge my paper and put some colors down. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean that sponge, wring it out. I'm going to grab a little bit of this orange to put a little bit of orange on top. So if you wanted to do some sponge effect on your paper for this technique that we're going to be doing, our goal is to create colorful paper samples so that we can use them, because we're going to use them to do cutouts, and you're going to build and construct a flower. And so these are going to be the flower petals, and so you can make them numerous types of colors and can be very colorful. So this is using the sponge, and then we did the brush. Oh, the other one would be is if I came in and I'm going to grab some of the green here. I'm going to put it down, and then if I take a straw and I come in and I blow on it, I can create some really interesting patterns that I might want to use, so that even if I wanted it to, let's come in and grab a little bit of this orange and I'll put it on top of this one here. See if I can get enough water on there so that that will expand out. So I could come in and do this type of effect using a straw to blow, so I can create this kind of a pattern. And if you do it, you're doing the splattering, make sure that you're not going to damage anything on the outside. And then if you needed to and you were going to use some additional colors and you don't have enough room right there, then what you want to do is a little paper plate will work to use it as an extra palette. So these are some samples that I've done. This is using both the red violet and the violet, mixing them together, and also adding some blue to get this kind of a technique. Done wet, and then you have to let this really dry. And then another color combination I did was some of the orange and yellow, add some green, and so this is another chart, another sample that I'm going to use for cutting out some of the shapes. And then this is the salt that has dried, and you can see where I've started to remove that. After it dries, then what you can do is take an eraser, and we're just going to rub it back and forth, and you're going to see that it comes loose. And then get that off there. And so then you can see this kind of a effect that you have just using the salt technique. And then the next one, some of the combinations I did was the yellow with the blue, so you can see this combo. This was using, I can tell that felt like the cardstock. This I did on printer paper, so you can kind of see what it looks like. All the paper will kind of do a little bit of warping, but it won't matter with what we're going to be doing with it. So if it warps, don't worry about it. What we're looking for is some colorful sheets of paper to work with. And then this one is cardstock also, and a little bit of splatter with a little bit of sponge. Now, if you create one and it dries and you go, well, that needs some you know, I don't like that. Can I go back and work on it and add some more? The answer is yes. So when I come in here, and maybe what I'll do is add some more blue to here, and I grab some here, make that a little bit stronger. And maybe I'll come in here and put a dab, and what I'll do is do some spraying on this. So we're going to take the kind of blow on it so that you can kind of see that type of effect. So again, I'm going to take another one. This one here. And my water has been dirtied up. I'm going to get some clean right here. I'm going to come back in with a little bit stronger. I'm going to get this, try to get as much pigment on there as possible. Clean that. I want to add a bunch of water to that. I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. Okay, I want some of this orange to be a little bit stronger. So I'm going to come in here. And then again, what you're doing, so I don't know if my head was in the way with this last one, but if it was, this is what it would look like. So if I wanted this type of effect, so that when I would lay this down to cut out my colors for my flower, I would have this type of effect. I could let this dry, and then if I thought I wanted to add some purple and do some purple on top of there, but first let it dry so that it doesn't get too muddy on you. So that ends this segment, because we talked a little bit about directly dry paper, wet method, laying down water, adding your colors to it. We did a little bit of splatter. We worked with a sponge. And then you have your toothbrush technique and your salt method. So in the next segment, when we go to talk about how to construct all this. See you soon.